We on part 73, the state of football. Welcome back to your new home. Real Football Talk in the Mornings. Ric Serritella here at the Jersey Shore, broadcasting live for another edition. Back at it again, of course, with my co-host down in New Orleans, John Murphy, VP of Personnel for Toronto Argonauts. Will be out in sunny San Diego tomorrow. Joe DeLeon will be stepping in, filling in as I fly out to San Diego. John will join me out later in the day, and we will be broadcasting on location Friday morning show out in San Diego, the Hub Football Camp. Of course, a star-studded event. We'll have more coverage. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. Of course, Ryan Roberts is here with us today on this great Veterans Day 2020. Salute to all of our veterans and military that have served this great fine country of ours. Director of NFL Draft Bible Scouting. And, oh, by the way, we're not done picking apart his mock draft yet. We'll have a little bit of fun with that. How are you, Ryan?
I'm good. I heard John called me clickbait yesterday, so I had to get on to that.
Well, we're going to discuss, and I had a blast on the Mav Sports Take podcast live stream show last night, so check that out. It's floating around the Twitterverse. We're live 6 days a week, AM, PM, making a primetime appearance last night, so we'll post that up on the website later today. Of course, Scouting the Nation, our weekly scouting analysis. Ryan has his mock draft. We've got the Thursday mailbag being unveiled tomorrow. The Jacoby Stevens feature still on the way on the desktop. So a lot of good things happening at NFLDraftBible.com. Of course, the relaunch coming soon. So if you're not a disciple, become a member today. Go all access. Save 50% with our promo code Familia50. Familia50. And today we're going to have a little bit of fun with some under the radar prospects. But let's start off with the Senior Bowl. We'll shine the spotlight there. Invites now being announced at a pretty good rate. It's an exciting time. It's a hopeful opportunity, right? Especially with some of these FCS players being announced. And so we have been in communication with the NFL league office. And so, any agent, player, school out there listening should know, if you accept and participate in any all-star event or the NFL Combine, you will automatically forfeit your NCAA eligibility, which is important to know, especially for the FCS prospects, because their season will likely start in the spring. So they will have to make a decision. Quite frankly, every college football player will need to declare and make a decision by that January 18th deadline. But, the invites are starting to trickle out. A couple guys from Michigan, Cade Johnson from San Diego State, Kenny Yeboah, the tight end now down in Mississippi, who began over at Temple. Your guy, Ryan Spencer Brown, a lot of FCS offensive linemen. In fact, David Moore, Dylan Raduns. Anybody you kind of want to shine the spotlight on there, Ryan?
So I feel like one guy that got kind of thrown to the wayside a little bit, I didn't see much talk about it, was Levi Onwuzurike, the defensive tackle out of Washington, who actually accepted his invite, I think maybe 2 days ago at this point. He's a guy in this 2021 class. I am really struggling with the interior defensive line. I think that it is not a great class overall up top. I think that Levi is the type of athlete at Washington where he can really vault himself. He opted out of the season, but a big showing down in Mobile with the athletic gifts that he has, if he's able to transition that momentum into the combine, I think that he might be a real player, maybe top 2, top 3 interior defensive lineman in the class. Then another guy, just real quick, Cade Johnson, South Dakota State. He was a guy that somebody in his family actually reached out to me and just was kind of touching base, because he was really in between on, am I just going to declare? Am I going to wait until the spring? Am I going to transfer to a school and head back to school in the 2021 fall season? So he was really in between. And then he gets that surprise invite, and just a nice little story there. Him kind of waiting it out, trying to see, multiple sides of everything, the best opportunity that presented it to himself. And now he's going to be down in Mobile, the speedster from South Dakota State. So a pretty cool story to see what he's able to do down there in Mobile.
Yeah, and again, another great opportunity for an FCS player. Only six FCS players selected in the 2020 NFL draft. We need to do everything we can to change that stigma around. But some big names also being announced here, John. By the way, Ryan, give me that pronunciation again. It sounded like you just practiced this in front of the mirror a couple times. Let me hear that again.
Levi Onwuzurike.
All about the confidence, baby. Even if it's not right, he's so confident in the way he said it.
Yeah,
Like,
the difference is he says it fast. Turner kind of makes his way through.
Forget about
it. Gets caught in the ripple of the pronunciation. So you just got to rip it. Just go with it and say it as fast as you can and go to the next guy.
I was working.
There you go. But yeah, some P5 players being announced. I mean, we've talked about the Nico Collins situation there, John, with the Michigan signing with an agent, not being allowed to opt back in. He now has to wait until the Senior Bowl. But again, we don't know for sure. I mean, listen, nobody can predict the future and what kind of the landscape is going to be in January. Hopefully, he gets an opportunity. If not, he may have to wait till the combine.
Yeah. Well, as we've learned, no one uncircles the wagons better than all of us in 2020. So I think it's nice that we got the as we're doing the introductions to All-Star game that we have to give the Ric Serritella read the bottom line, because if you're in it, you're in it. Like that's the first time we've ever had to kind of add the kind of cautionary flag of, if you enter an all-star game, you're now declared for the draft. Usually that's a common sense approach to it. But I guess we now know that if they are announcing them through the Senior Bowl, that the Senior Bowl is recognizing or knowing ahead of time that these players are, genuinely now not going to play in the spring. I don't think there's too many of these guys. Let's take Robert Rochelle, for an example. I don't think there's a chance that they did this blindly without knowing what his intentions were. So I think it's pretty easy to then decipher that, if there's an opt-out guy who's eligible, they'll be able to put him in. I think the real interesting thing will be how many of these kids that normally have now been able to go to the Senior Bowl as third-year players, as even redshirt sophomores, because they've completed their eligibility.
Mm-hmm.
Are all these classes and everything they're doing going to get those same guys on the same forecast to be graduated or finish school by time the Senior Bowl has to make their decisions? And the other one is, hey, everybody has their own analysis of where these kids are at this stage of the process. But is the Senior Bowl this year growing or going in a different direction to say, hey, there's going to be a top level group of guys that have already said no thank you, or have already said, like, hey, if we're playing through our bowl game, and such, like, that's going to be where we're going to kind of halt it, because they're, this is an interesting group, right? And it does have some guys that normally would be, in my mind, more NFLPA or Shrine game invites at the moment, and that then might graduate into the Senior Bowl at a later date. I'm wondering if the Senior Bowl is not taking a really, positive approach to this, in the sense of saying, hey, this might be a better crop of guys this year to invite, because they are then really helping the cause, both from a scouting standpoint, the player, evaluation part, and saying, hey, if you end up with 2 or 3 or 4 guys less drafted, but you did a better job of relating to what's going on with everybody, it'll kind of be interesting to see if there's another element here to the Senior Bowl that we haven't heard of yet, or that hasn't happened yet. Are they opening the rosters a little more, which would seem, a hard way to go when it's, COVID time, and such like that. But, some of the guys, they definitely have draftable grades. It would be interesting to me to see how it all plays out. And do they already kind of have an idea that maybe some of the other name brand guys
Did we just lose Johnny there? We lost him right in mid thought. Just it happened to me a week ago, and we lost John right in the middle of his train of thought.
It was so profound that it overloaded his internet.
But no, I mean, to his point, the Illinois State Christian Uphoff. I mean, I don't think that he's a surefire draft pick, right? So, but he's also probably. I don't think Illinois State has played any games. So, hey, come on out, showcase your skills. Same thing with Cade Johnson. I mean, I thought he was kind of a fringe, draftable, borderline kind of guy. I mean, in years past, would he get a Senior Bowl invite? I'm not sure. But even like the Grambling State offensive lineman, now there's a guy who had already decided to opt out. He didn't really declare his intent for the NFL draft. He was kind of taking a wait and see approach, and then Doug, again, hat off to Nagy. I mean, are you really going to turn down a Senior Bowl invite when Mr. Grambling man himself, Doug Williams, calls and says, "Hey," and so at that point, it's like, okay, well, I guess I am declaring for the draft, but we got John Murphy back. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. I think if that's the case, it's very good, and not to be unexpected by somebody like Jim Nagy, who, if he was doing his former job, in an NFL scouting department, this would be some of those conversations, right? If you had a chance to interview guys before the combine, you might interview some of the guys that are, kind of more 2 to 5, and even try to work in some 4th to 7th rounders, that have unique stories or are in unique situations, like saying taking a kid from Illinois State that hasn't played but has a good-looking composition of height, weight, speed. If some of these things start working hand in hand, which they have not in the past, and all of a sudden we have, kind of a unified idea of how to best serve the football community from January to April, it could be very different than what we've ever seen, but it could also be a lot of fun to work it and cover it. And more importantly, we might be able to save a few of those sad stories of where was this guy and how come he's not getting to the NFL until 2022 or 2023 when he came out in 2020 or 2021, right? There's a lot of guys, that I know that, Dave was speaking to when he was in Edmonton, that Russ is speaking to in Calgary, that I'm speaking to in Toronto, who in most times you would have thought they'd already have gotten an NFL shot or be kind of more vested, in terms of what's going on for them. And you've seen it the last couple of weeks, if you turn on and watch a couple of these spring league games, as we're getting the roster, sent to us and vetted out there, for the hub football. And when you're watching Chip Smith, post video and photos of the guys he's training, out there, these are not, leftovers. These are not bad football players. There's a lot of interesting names. I've seen LSU running back Nick Brissett and ULL defensive tackle Christian Ringo, have both been up there, in Canton. You saw it yesterday, Matthew Sexton, a real quicker than fast, dual purpose wide receiver from Eastern Michigan. He's now got a 98-yard, kickoff return, 76-yard punt return, goes down there and has made 2 tackles, on special teams. So, you got somebody who's given an all-out effort when your last guy to training camp, because he was at the hub in October, shows up. He's the last guy added from COVID, and he's out there playing wide receiver wearing jersey number 41. You got to rep the 41. If you're a receiver and you get stuck in an alternate jersey, you got to do your best. So I think it's showing that there's kids, that are out there, and that these opportunities are now kind of waning in terms of how they used to be done. So I think it's kind of kudos to the Senior Bowl that if there's another shoe to drop, if they're going to have kind of expanded rosters for the week of practice, if you're doing some smart things, thinking outside the box, kudos to the guys down there in Mobile and to Jim Nagy for kind of coming out with a different looking roster at the beginning. But nonetheless, guys that, teams would, want to get their eyes and, eyes on and everything else because of how this season has gone so far.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to figure out, like, Are they going to quarantine? Does it become a 2-week event? Are they going to quarantine these guys for 5 days, like the NFLPA protocol is intact in the NFL? And if they don't, how many scouts are really going? I still don't know what that looks like. But last note here on the Senior Bowl, though, I think one kind of guy that really needs it more than any player, regardless of who gets invited, and that is Jamie Newman. We talked about it on the show last night, Ryan. Here's a guy that's all over the board. You're hearing all kinds of things behind the scenes. Where do you kind of have Jamie Newman projected as we go into the draft process?
Well, I think we had a day 3 grade on him. He's a guy that if you watch him at Wake Forest, it was underwhelming, and it was something where you're watching him and you're like, this kid is 6'3 plus, this kid is 230 plus pounds, this kid is an athlete, this kid has a strong arm. Like, he kind of checks those physical trait boxes. But then, one, Wake Forest does him no favors with that offense. That elongated mesh on that zone read into just some deep shots outside the numbers, like that's the influence of their passing game. There's not real progression. There is, hey, I see that there's going to be one-on-one on the outside. I'm going to throw it when I see that there's a one-on-one opportunity, which is fine. But we're not talking about a variation of reads going through progressions. We're talking about a very simplistic offensive structure. Then he goes to Georgia, and you're excited for that opportunity because we haven't seen a really talented Georgia quarterback in a while. Fortunately, Justin Fields was not, the guy that was anointed the next coming there with his freshman year. So he left. So we're looking at that influx of talent at the quarterback position. You're a little excited. Like, let's see what Georgia can do. That offense with those playmakers at wide receiver with George Pickens and those guys, a good defense behind them. Let's see what we got in Jamie Newman. Then, by all accounts, he doesn't even win the starting job. He decides to opt out, and now he's just that kind of guy that's in limbo right now. He's been working out and eyeing the opportunity, and then he gets a random opportunity here, or maybe I shouldn't say random, but he gets that opportunity at the Senior Bowl. And like you said, I don't think there's any week that's going to be bigger maybe than any one player, because this senior quarterback class, outside of him, Kyle Trask, there is a lot of questions that remain to be unanswered. And my biggest question is, if he goes down and he lights it up for a week, how much can that push him up the board? Because we talk about guys coming off of a solid season, and then they go to the Senior Bowl and they ride that momentum, and then you're in front of all those eyes. But if I have a guy here that had very mixed tape as a junior, opts out his senior year, and then has just the week of momentum at Mobile, am I riding a mid-day 3 prospect to an early second round grade? I'm just kind of curious to see how much momentum 1 week can carry a player.
Well, it carried Daniel Jones pretty far. It carried Christian Ponder pretty far. So it can be done. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a guy that some people believed was the top senior quarterback prospect. And since then, John, I mean, it's no secret, Kyle Trask and Kellen Mond have clearly leapfrogged him.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with this, when it comes to him is, that next tier group of guys, and depending on who decides to opt in to this draft, not only what does he have to do in order to put himself in the mix with those guys. Now, you may look at him as maybe, depending on what we see in terms of how he throws in those practices, how he throws again at the combine. Do you see greater upside? Do you see a better development pattern because he may have a higher ceiling, than a Trask or Mond? He's got more physical traits, than both. There's potential to move around with him in the pocket and do some things with him. It'll be really interesting to see where was he on different people's board, or was he really always more of a 3rd to 5th at best, and now it's kind of shifted toward the lower end of that with no film this year? Can he rebound? Because he may be able to do some things at the next level and have a little higher ceiling, whereas, you're getting what you're seeing out of Trask. That's not, he's not a prototype in terms of, I don't see that being automatically the type of production we'd see at the NFL level. He's doing things with a good amount of talent around him, good offensive line play. Do I see somebody who's a backup and in the right circumstance, can play and start for teams? Yes. Do I see somebody that you're immediately going to anoint and say some point in his career, he's a top 15 quarterback in the NFL? I'm not ready to go in that neighborhood yet. And the thing with Mond is he's done a better job since that game against Florida. Like leading into that week, to me, was a make it or break it type scenario. And he's not turning the ball over. But there's also a lot of games now where the other aspects of them as a team, they've come together, right? The defense is playing equal or better than you thought. Minus their best wide receiver, offensively, they have played very capable to above average on offense, where Spiller's doing a hell of a job in the backfield. The tight end is a prototype for future, drafts, and they're using that play action and Mond's escapability to make plays. But the thing is, as good of an athlete as he is, he's not always great in the pocket with his awareness of the pass rush, and he's not a guy that's as much of a threat to run as some other guys. So he looks athletic, but then in his game, it's not something where I would say he's a dual purpose threat, guy. So I think they've both made their move with their film to give themselves a chance to be rated above him. Newman still has a chance to show up at the Senior Bowl and at the Combine. And if you're throwing at those two events comes out to be better than what people have seen out of these guys, you have at least a chance to manipulate yourself back into that conversation. But I'm also, like I said, I'm also wondering if, because he had production at Wake Forest, and it was Wake Forest, did enough people, kind of delve in deeper to watch him and say, okay, but what does this look like at the next level? And then you might have kind of eased yourself, kind of taken it down a notch and not been so excited, kind of about it. And was his grade more mid-round to begin with? And so when we're saying he's not as good as we thought, no, he's exactly as good as he was. You kind of valued it or overstated it. I think Nagy has even said it, one time when he was announcing a post of inviting somebody, that one of the things that he's highly critical of is when you're watching college football games and you hear the announcers or a local broadcaster for the game, just giving guys their version of what they've heard or read or think, and they go off of a website or they go off of what an area scout in the press box or on the field may have said to them. And they may kind of overstate the fact, like, hey, if every guy that we've heard is going in the early rounds of the draft, well, there's going to be 125 picks in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because I was down at Wake Forest and talking to some scouts that there was some legitimate love for Jamie Newman. And I was surprised, to be honest. And it was a couple of teams that could use a quarterback, quite frankly. And so it was the game against Jordan Love. And I came away completely not disappointed, but I was unimpressed. And so, I think there's legitimate love out there now. How he interviews, I think, could go as far as anything in terms of what his draft stock is. In terms of Mond, I will say this. Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done in terms of structure inside the pocket. But I do think that's one area of his game that he has made strides in, right? Because last year it was complete chaos. And now you're starting to see he is starting to kind of find his way a little bit, be more composed, and have a little bit better presence and decision-making rather than just being a complete debacle. So I think he's trending in the right direction. Trask, I agree with. I think he's a good backup is really his ceiling. Guys that want to put him in the first round conversation, I don't know. I mean, I don't see it either. All right, the state of football here, weekdays 9 a.m. Eastern. Shout out to the Familia, Jesse Frittich in the chat room. Our new found friend, Sippy Sports Show. Make sure you go check his show out. We appreciate him tuning in. Appreciate all the chat room people. Will 3 or 4 win teams get a bowl game this year? Well, I'll tell you this, Sippy. I think about 20 or 25 bowl games have already been canceled, right? So, it's going to be a different landscape. I don't really see. I mean, I guess by default, if there's going to be some Pac-12 teams in bowl games, yeah, you could maybe see that because they only play 5 games, but it's going to be an unusual landscape for the bowl game season, and it's unfortunate because I think I always felt like that was like the unofficial start to the draft season, right? Because especially on the NFL level, if your team's out of the hunt and not thinking playoffs, well, now you start getting the coaches involved in the scouting process. They start paying attention to the bowl games. Hey, who's this guy? And I always believe the best front offices are connected and communicative and working together. I think in the modern day and age, those are the most successful organizations overall. All right, so we've got about 20 minutes left to play around with. I do have some under the radar prospects we're going to dive into, but Ryan, you're not off the hook yet with this mock draft, man. We're picking it apart yesterday a little bit. I think the one guy I didn't get a chance to really discuss yesterday, and I'll be honest with you, there was really nobody. I know on the Twitterverse, people were surprised. There was really nobody shocking. I would say I'm not there on Carson Strong in terms of round 1 yet. Talented, yes. The article you did breaking down all his medical, it sounds complicated. And so I've got to kind of diagnose that and understand that a little bit more before I put him in that first round conversation. But I guess the one surprise, initial shock, and then I thought about it like, okay, I guess Eric Stokes is now officially a first rounder.
I love Eric Stokes, man. I've been on that wagon since summer because I felt like going into the year, Tyson Campbell, the other corner for Georgia, was kind of getting that hype, right? Like, oh, this guy could be that potential riser in the first round. I am looking at Eric Stokes, and I'm like, this kid's right around 6 foot. He's got more than enough length, long arms. He's a legit 4.3 athlete from all indications, from things that we're hearing. Like, he's in that range, 4.3, 4.4 kid. I think if a team valued the player, and I'm not saying that he's quite to this level, but if you valued what C.J. Henderson did in last year's class from a man coverage skill set, I think that you're really going to value Eric Stokes because that kid is sticky down the field, and he's not underly physical. Like, he will come up and he will get his nose dirty in the run game. He does some things. I don't love him in press. I love him a little more in off-man opportunities, but I think length, athleticism, I feel like he's got all the tools, and he's having a really nice season. I feel like his tape the last 2 years before this was a little undervalued because he was getting pass breakups. He was disrupting the catch point, but he had it come down with an interception. Now he has 3 interceptions, 2 he's taken back to the house. It was just a matter of time with him and J.C. Horn, in my opinion. That ball production was going to vault those guys, and once you could see that they are able to create turnovers, then the athletic ability, the man coverage ability was really going to vault them up in this conversation. I think that Eric Stokes is an exceptionally talented player.
Yeah, and I guess he's in that conversation now, John. I'll let you weigh in, but it seems like when you talk about the cornerback conversation, it's, take your pick, but you got Patrick Surtain, you've got Caleb Farley, you've got, who am I missing? The big one. Shaun Wade, and now Eric Stokes. John, are you ready to put him in that category? Is this now the conversation?
Yeah, I think all of those guys would have to be considered in that measure, and I think that is a position that, the closer we get, the further down the line, we get with you seeing how desperate, and this year has shown it. There's not enough quality O-line, and there's not enough quality cover guys in the league. It would not be surprising to see, another run on that, especially when you see that there's probably another, pretty much B plus or, close to A or A minus receiver class. You got to start drafting some guys that can cover, these kids. So I think the guys that are, of the bigger, more physical willingness to show that, they can come down and man cover, and deal with these bigger receivers, one-on-one, I think there's a very good chance that you would see, guys taken there. And hey, it is a time away. There's still some time, between now and when we see this. But I would say if right now you gave me the chance to go back in time, and take AJ Terrell, or Damon Arnett or Eric Stokes, I might be heavily influenced to be leaning on, taking Stokes. So when you look at that, you could also say that it should give a guy like Stokes a really good shot that, in anywhere in that 20 to 32, if you're a team looking for a corner and some of these other guys have come off, he's definitely, a guy I think you have to start looking at and saying it's not just top 50, but that being in the top 32 is going to be, I think, heightened again by the factor that, hey, you're probably going to be talking about another 4, 5, 6 receivers being in the, potentially in the first round after last year, and what we're seeing on a regular basis, at the NFL level, that like, hey, the high quality teams, right? You take Gilmore away from the Patriots, and suddenly, they're not the same team, and then you look at a team like the Dolphins who have 3 guys, and suddenly their defense looks totally different than what you've seen before. You really need to have 3 above average guys, on your team in order to be a playoff contending defense. And the teams that aren't, there's still a lot of teams that are playoff bound that are kind of struggling to find that other guy. Imagine Stokes playing opposite of Tre'Davious White. Imagine Stokes, in place of a Janoris Jenkins for the Saints. Imagine the Eagles actually having a guy like Stokes instead of the guys they're playing. It's a very interesting topic. I think to say, like, the yin and yang of this is a lot of offense, talking about 3 or 4 quarterbacks, again, franchise type quarterbacks, teams having to draft those. Another thing that teams don't seem to have enough of is quality cover corners. So that's not surprising. It wouldn't be surprising if we had Stokes, and you even said, is there a 5th or 6th guy that's going to be borderline?
Well, J.C. Horn, I forgot. How could I forget Ryan's guy? I forgot to mention J.C. Horn. I mean, there you go. So you got J.C. Horn, Eric Stokes, Caleb Farley, Patrick Surtain,
Shaun Wade.
There's 5 corners going in your first round. And, oh, by the way, he's got 5 quarterbacks. And about 6 wide receivers. So 50% of the draft consists of.
It's all about the passing game. Passing game.
I told you. You felt. Look, first Russ fell for the trap. Now you go for the trap. You got you both.
Well,
I'm telling you, I was staying close to the position groups that for me. So like interior defensive line class, I'm not going to say I'm all the way out on, but that class I don't even
remember seeing Marvin Wilson in your mock.
Marvin Wilson was not in my mock. I'm not a first round Marvin Wilson guy. I'm out on Marvin Wilson in the first round. That interior defensive line class, I am searching for guys. That defensive end class, I had Greg Rousseau, and I had a couple guys going late into
Patrick Jones, I think the Pittsburgh defensive end doesn't get talked about enough on a national level.
No, and I think he's really talented. It's just I feel like the defensive end, outside line, rush backer group, that's more of a very heavy day 2 implication that some guys are going to rise to the late in the first round. I don't think there's a lot of bona fide first round players there. The offensive tackle class after Sewell, there's a lot of depth there, but even there, you're projecting the guys in late in the second round. I think there's just a couple positions that are a little absent of talent where that there might be a run on cornerbacks. There's going to be a run on wide receivers. I feel like it's just where does that run start in a first round mock right now? And like John said, we are many months away from the real night that we're going to have a lot more clarification on what the draft is actually going to bring. But I think that really for the cornerback group, I think it's a really nice class. And if that run starts early, if we do get a corner in the top 10, then I think that we're going to start to see that second guy come off maybe a little earlier than anticipated. Is Eric Stokes probably more 20 to 32, like John said? Yeah. But at that point in that class, I was like, this might be where the run starts right here.
Yeah. You have him going 14th to Denver. You've got your boy Horn going 6th. Are we done shredding the mock draft, John? Can we move on?
I think the thing that he's hit on for sure, besides getting all the fake news out of the way for this week, is that if you look at D tackle that he mentioned, pass rusher, probably that who's the next offensive tackle that you're drafting, and the tight ends. Where are they all going to come from? Redshirt sophomore and juniors, right? So really, in all reality, I love him. I love him as a player, and I love what Marvin Wilson stands for in terms of what he did and what he's done to come back. That's more of a late, if you fell in love with him, I don't mind you taking him at the end of the first. Not, to me, a pure first round pick. The Washington kid might have a doable first round grade, but he is physically not limitations, but he's not physically intimidating in the sense of, you get to the NFL and you're 6'2" and change, you have to be A+ all the time to produce when you're not, at the kind of physical presence on the regular to do that. Now, doesn't mean you can't come in and do it, but it also means you're a scheme-specific type fit for the University of Washington D tackle. So to me, I don't have anybody in the senior class that's getting a true first-round grade. Yeah, at that spot. The tight ends are the younger guys. And the same thing with, at pass rusher, and probably the next 2 or 3 best offensive tackles, in this class are going to be who declares. And then if you tell me who declared, then we could tell you who the next best guy is. Because I think the kid from Virginia Tech is probably the ascender, in the group. And now all of a sudden, if you're putting that kid in the mix to be at 10 or 12 or 15 like last year, where that happened, and this guy's going where Becton went, very different players, but just saying, for argument's sake, he's the next guy. Well, that's putting you somewhere, in between 10 and 15 in the first round. Suddenly the numbers will start looking different, as we move to the next steps, there. And I think sometimes you have to also, when you're mock draft, are you doing it based off of the team need, your vibe of what they should do or could do, there, so, I think it's always fun to have to do them early. And then they're always good for, kind of your tracking of where you had a team or where your thoughts were with the team at this stage of things versus January, then prior to the combine, after the combine, and then, hey, normally there's a lot of fun to be had with it because there's a lot of communication and verbiage of stuff going on during the pro days. If we're stuck again with a very dull, off season again because of all this, it'll be interesting to see if, we're more stagnant with, a club picking the same guy for, 8 mocks in a row.
Well, yeah, and free agency obviously will alter the landscape, but the Virginia Tech offensive tackle Christian Darrisaw, he immediately jumps out to you when you're down on the field pregame. And I'll tell you what, to your point, gentlemen, after Panay, you could state a case for the Texas kid Cosme. I think Darrisaw can fit the mold. Maybe Jalen Mayfield down the road, but in terms of a guy that you can get in this upcoming draft and envision as a plug-and-play left tackle, there's really just those 3 guys. Because right. I think everybody else, pretty much, if they're going to start, is going to be over on the right side.
If you need a right tackle in this class, it's really nice. If you need a developmental piece at right tackle, it's also a really good class. But there's not a lot of true blind side protectors in this class outside of, like you said, Sewell, Cosme, Darrisaw. Like, those are the guys. If you miss out on one of those, then you might be in some trouble if that's a dire need for you.
Yeah, and Slater, I think, is a guy that kicks inside. Maybe he can survive outside, but he's no sure thing, that's for sure. Here is a sure thing. The State of Football, weekdays, 9 a.m. Eastern, each and every day. I will be en route to San Diego tomorrow, so Joe DeLeon will fill in with John Murphy. We'll have Dane Vandernat. Neil Stratton will check in. We'll talk about some more of the all-star selection process with Dane. Of course, Neil Stratton always delivers the goods with his industry insider at Inside the League. And oh, by the way, you can get his new book right now, Scout Speak. If you go all access on the NFLDraftBible.com, you'll get a free copy of Scout Speak. You'll get a hard copy of the official 2021 NFL Draft Bible publication. You'll gain all access to our new premium website coming up. So take advantage of the promo code Familia 50. And again, Joe DeLeon on deck for tomorrow. Friday, we'll be in San Diego at the Hub, broadcasting live. And we got a few minutes left to play around with. Sippy has anointed you the next Southern Miss head coach, by the way, John Murphy. We got a lot of Southern Miss conversation going on in the chat room. Frank Gore Jr., we talked about him. He's on the board, a freshman there at Southern Miss. I can't say I've watched a lot of Southern Miss games. I've seen bits and pieces. I mean, Gore, from what I've seen, he kind of runs like his father a little bit. I don't know if you guys have seen him at all.
Yeah, he's a smaller guy than his dad right now. He hasn't really filled out, but he looks just like him in the face, man. It's so funny. Got a little twitch to him though. He's explosive. He's a lot different than his pops though, for sure, running style wise.
Well, Bloodlines is going to get him consideration. So the real question is, can Frank Gore hang on for another 2 or 3 years to wind up either playing with him or against him? And the way Frank Gore is going right now, I wouldn't doubt it. He's playing with the Jets, so his numbers don't look too attractive. But hey, what he brings inside the locker room, maybe not on this organization, but 5'7", 175 range. So hey, he's at Southern Miss. He's going to be a long shot, but the Bloodlines could give him a shot. All right, there were a couple under the radar prospects that I want to kind of try to highlight here. A couple of these guys, we talked about offensive tackles. Rashawn Slater was one. Ryan, early on in the process when we spoke to Northwestern, we were very well made aware of Rashawn Slater. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so he plays blindside for them. He plays left tackle. He opted out for the season. He is, if we have an accurate measurement on him, that he is less than ideal size. I think the arm length is going to be the big conversation that has with him because he holds up on the edge pretty well. He had some great tape against Chase Young. I think, though, optimal moving inside the guard. I think in his zone blocking scheme with the movement skills he has, ability to get up to the second level, I think that he's got a whole lot of talent. I thought about putting him into the first round mock, to be honest, conversation. I think that he's firmly in that second round conversation. If not, I think he's a very steady player that can fit into multiple spots of an offensive line. I think he could potentially even play center. I think that he has that flexibility and ability to back up all three interior spots at worst case scenario. And I think that he's a starting option, pretty pro ready from the jump to play in his zone blocking scheme. And he's, again, if you want to see an impressive film from last year, turn on his game against Chase Young. He had a really nice outing against Ohio State.
Yeah, that film alone is going to definitely turn some heads. John, your thoughts on Slater?
Yeah, I think, that when you mention that, the part with him, what does he turn out to be when they, get him in there? Can somebody say, like just big enough, 6'4" and something, it probably in that area. But it'll be determined, it's not going to, the one thing you do know is it's probably not going to be accompanied by being 6'4" and having like 34 or 35 inch arms. Right. So if you don't have one or the other, you're going to have some people be a little pessimistic, about it. But I think in the right scheme, in terms of what you're asking him to do, the factor that he moves so well, you could definitely see people want to attempt, to put him at the best spot, possible for them. So I don't think it's a write-off, that automatically he can't, do it. I think there are going to be, some teams, like Turner said, like, hey, certain teams focus in on certain things and they may have, him drop down a notch, or they may have that part highlighted that he's, 6'4" and change and not 6'5" or 6'6", and that he's, 33 and a half or 33 and whatever, but you're not going to find too many better athletes, at that position. So I think that part could carry him, to be in, again, I think it's in that you could, get him in there in the late first, and if you're getting him, too much into round two, suddenly it'd be hard to say this, but suddenly a guy like that becomes a steal if he's taken lower than that just because of his height. If it boils down to you're seeing guys come off the board, that shouldn't, and it's only because they're 6'5" or 6'6" or other, and there are a number of guys, built like that in this draft. But, I would have a hard time, thinking that there's many guys that you can't plug and play next year. So even if you start off at guard, or even if you started off on the other side, to me, he's a guy that can play left tackle at some point of his NFL career. And again, there's not a lot of those guys that just show up. And again, even in this draft, when you look at some of those guys that would be considered the anywhere from 3rd to 7th round type left tackles, a lot of them are purely in a developmental stage. And you're taking a wild card shot that guy can develop into ever being a player where for sure if you draft Slater, worst case scenario, he's a starting guard or right tackle for you. Best case scenario, the height doesn't matter because of your scheme, and also the factor that it's not like he's going to come in at 6'3". I mean, he's going to be 6'4" and change. It's just how much change are you going to, how much change? Has he gotten drink some of that COVID water and, maybe you get to 6'4.5".
Well, I don't know. Maybe he was on roller skates when you measured him. I'm not sure he comes in that high. We'll see though. There definitely is. I mean, if you get Slater in the top 50, there's a lot of value, no doubt about it. Yeah. Looking for a 1st round left tackle. This man might be it's Spencer Brown. Ryan, you've been tooting that horn. Northern Iowa. Is this a guy? Is he a potential left tackle? Is he a right tackle? Is he a developmental prospect?
I think there's some development to him just because he hasn't been playing the position that long. I remember first seeing him when he was a redshirt sophomore, and he was about 6'8", 280 at that point. Now he's up to 320 pounds. He's a former tight end, defensive end recruit out of LXXIII, Iowa, playing 8-man football. He came to UNI at 230 pounds, and now he's standing, 6'8 plus, 320 pounds on the Senior Bowl radar. He came back with a Bledsoe grade in the 3rd round, and seems like there's a nice opinion on him. Now he's going to be down in Mobile, which I think is going to be a huge opportunity for him with the UNI season, obviously being pushed to spring and him opting out. He's been working with Joe Staley, who he got the news from, right? The Senior Bowl invite, which was a cool thing. And he's a guy that I've kept close ties with. He's an awesome young man. I believe in him because I think that the core values that you need offensive tackle, obviously with the length, athleticism attributes. Besides those, we talk about core strength and flexibility, which he has in spades. I gave him a comp to Mike McGlinchey. I think there's a lot of parallels to his game. So is he a right tackle? I think that he's probably going to stay on the right side, but I wouldn't be surprised if a team looks at that length, that athleticism, and says you could be a blindside protector down the road because you have all the attributes to do well. He's going to have really long arms. So I'm a big fan of Spencer. I think after that 3rd round Bledsoe grade, if he goes down and he has a nice week at the Senior Bowl, we're talking about a late 1st, 2nd round potential offensive tackle, which there is still some developmental to, right? But working with Joe Staley this full offseason, we'll see how farther along his technique is. And then obviously playing the big dogs down in Mobile is going to be a big tell of just how much he's progressed over the last year or so, even without the game experience.
Well, another small school offensive tackle who's going to get a chance to showcase his talents down in Mobile is Dylan Ray Duns. John, North Dakota State, I believe a 4-year starter. How does he stack up?
Yeah, I think with both of these guys, and maybe it's because they're not getting, this full season and you're not getting to see them. These are both guys I would kind of pump the brakes on, a little bit. The height thing when it comes to, Spencer is somewhat debilitating at times. It's great because he's got 35 plus arms with his length, but that low man wins. There haven't been a lot of guys that can beat him, where he's at. But at the next level, at times with run blocking, he's a big dude, but he's not a finisher, and there's some false steps to it. And the same thing when he's in pass pro against better guys, quicker guys. I wonder the guy that's able to get him off his spot and then come back inside on him. I worry about guys with elite quickness, against him as an edge guy. I still think that this is a guy that's still more developmental. Now, if you want to overdraft because you really believe in the developmental part, that's fine, because at that spot, you're not going to get always the cleanest, prospects there. Whereas Dylan, I could see a more, third, fourth. I don't think either one of these guys is going to be overly impressive athletically in terms of the testing aspect. Their size will be impressive, but just not, to be a guy that you see as a for sure, early pick. I would have some trouble with both of these guys if I was taking them and expecting dividends right away. But I do see, especially Brown, if you can get him down a little, and working with guys like Staley, I always say with our guys, if you could then if you find big O-linemen, then you can have an O-line coach, but you kind of an assistant or somebody to work with that's that same size that kind of teaches them, like Joe Staley, like, hey, I'm a 6'7" dude. This is what I did to get my pad level as low as possible. But also here are some fundamental things you can work on with your technique, because you're never going to be the lowest guy, but you got to get a little lower than what you've done, to date. And I think working the footwork, right? To me, that's the big thing that Spencer needs to work on, is the footwork. And I think Dylan's thing is, if people have gotten over the factor that North Dakota State is no longer junior varsity football, right? This is not playing with the little guys. This is them dominating everybody they play. Right. And this is a club that they play, and anybody they put in front of them, they usually, win the game and are dominant. I think he's a kid with a good floor, but not maybe the biggest ceiling in his class. So I think you get a good, solid football player that should transfer into being a starting caliber tackle at the next level. But if you're looking for him to leaps and bounds be better than what you're seeing in college, I think that both of these guys, the athletic ability for their size is interesting, but it's for their size, right? You're not running a 4.9, this isn't Lane Johnson, and things like that. There are some things, with their technique and kind of the stiffness of that big body that would concern me if I immediately thought I was getting a starting left or right tackle.
So similar expectations for Spencer Brown, Dylan Ray Duns. But hey, there's still value there, potential for day two. I mean, anytime you can get a starting player, even though he's not a top caliber starter, hey, a solid starter in round two, especially on the offensive line. A lot of value to be had there. A lot of value to be had tuning in weekdays, 9 a.m. Eastern here on the State of Football. How about Sean Smith in the chat room going Concordia State on us with Chris Garrett, the outside linebacker? Hey, I'll tell you this, 6'3", 230 pounds. What Chris is going to have to deal with right now is being on the outside looking in as a priority free agent. Will he get a chance to showcase his talents at an all-star game? Will he get a combine invite? If not, will there be a pro day? And John is there whispering like, we would love him up north. The secret is out now, John.
Yeah, I mean, he's got, I think, 36 or 38 career sacks. He's a really good-looking kid on the hoof. The problem is that he's size. There's a size limitation, to him. So when you're watching him against his level, the problem is you get immediately excited that I thought, wow, this is like a 6'4", 250-pound pass rusher. Then I realized the linemen he are going against are all not that big. So wait a minute, he's not 6'4", 250. But he has that kind of relentless motor that you like out of a pass rusher. And when you're a small school kid, and you're looking for that, you have to have one thing or the other, right? Because we've seen guys, who the Daniels kid at from that West Virginia Wesleyan that the Buccaneers have given a shot to. We saw a kid from that conference. It might even have been Concordia, that Zach Moore, that got opportunity after opportunity. But again, 6'6", big 250, pretty body type. Someone watching this kid's film would fall in love with just that relentlessness that he has as a pass rusher. Now, can you run 4.7-ish? Can you do something athletically at your workout to then entice teams that, okay, use that relentlessness as a PR guy, as a guy that'll give your team fits. If you're playing against a 3-4 team, he can mimic a lot of those guys and then jump in and play teams. Here's Cam Gill. Now, Cam Gill played, Concordia is not going to want to mess with Wagner on most days, and such. But again, similar body type, has that frame, to carry probably 240, and not have it be troublesome to him. But I think the thing you have going for you is if you're playing at that level, if you're a running back, you got to have 1,500 plus, right? If you're a receiver, go 20, 25 yards a catch, something that makes it seem like you're standing out from the other guys at that level. 36 or 38 career sacks going into, your final year, you're doing something a lot right to give yourself, that type of opportunity, to at least put yourself in the picture, right? Make an area scout, have taken note of it. And again, it wouldn't be surprising a Minnesota, a Green Bay, like somebody in the NFC, North that he's playing in their backyard. You get a pro day and you get a club that, if you have a rookie mini camp, I don't see why that kid can't at least get that type of opportunity before having to turn his way north.
Well, hey, the secret is now out. Chris Garrett, Concordia State. Is there a prospect John Murphy doesn't know? We dare you to stump him. Get at us in the chat room. Shout out to all our chat room people, Jesse.
Plus, breaking news. Breaking news. After I said how many sacks he has, he's now going 32nd overall to the Jets in the next mock draft.
I think the Cam Gill comparison fits the bill from a body standpoint, right, production standpoint. The big knock on Cam, I couldn't sell him to any NFL team because of his arm length, 30-inch arms. And so, and Cam played defensive end, so he had to kick outside. And kudos to him. He busted his tail on special teams. And
I would say, be careful. And I'm not saying this is where you get your information from, but if you talk to a university, right, they're rounding up. At all times, they're rounding up. So I'm not saying somebody can't grow between their junior and senior. Some people can still have that little spurt between, 21 and 22, 23. It is possible. My guess from watching him, I would say he still comes in at around 6'3". So if he somehow has morphed into 6'4", there's a little more conversation. But still, like I said, I think, when it's more realistic that the NFL, and how they kind of weigh guys in, he's going to be in and around 6'3", probably in all likelihood. And the other thing is, how well does this kid do in transition in terms of when you get out of playing at Concordia and doing what they're asking you to do? Go and get with a trainer and go find maybe even your own linebacker coach there and start doing drills in reverse. Work on the drills that you have not worked on to date to give yourself some more flexibility so that if a club like the Steelers comes in, give the Steelers a chance to look at you and say, Ali Highsmith, how different is he than the Highsmith kid? How different are you body type wise, and how much flexibility do you have? Because, hey, you can be 6'3", 240 to 250, 4'7", 4'7", but if you have some flexibility there, now there's a chance for those 3-4 teams to think, hey, wait a minute, I can rush this guy off the edge, but I can also do a couple of things with these guys, because if you can't, then you get thrown in that mix of being just an undersized rush. And there's only so many Robert Mathis, body types in the world that are able to do that at the NFL level at under, the size measurements that most teams like. But those are exactly the type of guys, number one, we all enjoy, talking about. They are the type of kid that is going to potentially miss out, on things this year. And the other one is, don't be shy if there's a spring season to just go play your spring season at Concordia this year. If you're a kid like that, don't be shy to go back, and work on a master's degree or finish your degree on time, and stay in and have a chance for the area scouts to go out and see you have a 12, 15 sack season next year and a clean senior year, be all American, go out there and chase every, award and opportunity you can, because the NFL will be there. The question is, do you want to go in there kind of kicking and screaming, trying to have somebody make phone calls for you if they're not having, mini camps, and if 90-man rosters are, brimming with, players that didn't get that opportunity a year ago, it would be all likelihood that, when you look at last year's draft, that there would be a couple of Chris Garrett types that we could have talked about that never got to see the light of day, from the NFL. So, if you're Chris Garrett or you're listening and you know him, kind of be careful with what you do with this, unless you know for sure you're getting some read from the NFL that they know as much about you as we do.
Good advice. And I'm looking at you, the Spring League, because I want to see the Chris Garretts of the world. I want to see the Jamie Newmans of the world playing down there in the Spring League. Why not? Why not? Just as much value, if not more, than playing in an all-star game. Hey, it's been another hour of power here. Ric Serritella, John Murphy, Ryan Roberts breaking it all down on this Veterans Day, November 11th, 2020. Woo! I don't know, Ryan. You getting sick of me yet? Last night, today, pardon shot for the people here. We reversed the roles. It was fun to be, on the other side of it last night, not worrying about the rundown, the time, the guests, the transitions. I was just letting it loose, baby.
Yeah, I know. It's so much nicer to just be the guy that lays back and just answers questions, man. I love it. But I appreciate you guys having me on again. Friday, we're doing Friday Night Scout School, of course, 9:00 Eastern time. Running backs, we're talking this week. Philip Lindsay, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, all coming out of college. All a little bit of different circumstance, right? Some question marks that each of them had to answer to a different degree. So we're going to take a look at 3 different body types, 3 different stories, why they were valued, where they were valued, what people may have missed in the case of a Philip Lindsay, and take a look at all 3 stories a little bit there. So that's 9:00 Eastern time. Sign up today at NFLDraftBible.com for that seminar. Obviously, you should buy the season pass and get all the archived, because that is the best deal overall. But at the very least, come take a look at the running backs. I promise you that you will be back again after you take a look at myself and David Turner breaking down some running backs.
Yeah, 25 seminars. We're about 15 or so through, another 10 to go. They'll be diving into the business side of the, industry. And I like the Philip Lindsay. And again, a big part of the draft process is knowing who to trust and knowing who to listen to. I remember Steve Fairchild calling me every other day. I got this running back, Philip Lindsay. The NFL's overlooking him. I'm telling you, he's going to crush it. And so that'll be actually a fun film session, because you'll go put on the film now and say, well, why didn't this guy get drafted? What were we looking at? What were we not looking at? Right. So that'll be fun. Again, we'll be on location Friday from San Diego at the Hub Football. John Murphy and myself, Joe DeLeon, will be filling in tomorrow with Dane Vandernat and Neil Stratton. John, parting shot here on this Veterans Day.
Yes, it'll be great to head out there and see a couple of guys that you didn't expect. Probably Shane Ray and Matt Elam, never expecting to be, kind of in that situation. And hopefully what they can do is not only help put themselves back on the radar, but help attract attention. There's a number of guys that are really good football players that had really good college careers that, like you mentioned, you never know. There could be a Philip Lindsay, type guy in that, in that group of guys that, just waiting for that next opportunity. And in these days, it's very troublesome if you're that player waking up every day, going to the gym, waiting for the phone to ring, and, the phone's been quiet. So, if anything, we're hopeful that what we can add to that is just kind of bringing to light some of the stories and some of the names of guys that maybe you haven't heard of kind of before. Because like I said, you go look and the Hub's having success already out of what they did in October. Kelly Bryant was supposed to be there and had worked out for the Texans. Is that word of mouth that he was going out to something and they got concerned that, other people could see that, see him before they did. You just saw the other day, I think a second kicker, that had worked out for Nick Novak has been added to the practice roster. That seems to be the going trend now. You see the high, playoff caliber teams are putting an extra kicker, a punter, through the cycle and putting them on their practice roster, for the home stretch.
How about the Jaguars, though? 6 kickers already? Are you kidding?
6 kickers. I think they've definitely cleared the over, on the prop bet for a number of kickers used, in one season, there. So, and then when you look at that, just imagine, and give them a quick little shout out, Sergio Castillo, who quietly has been the Jets' best player since joining the team in terms of doing your job. Go out there, bang a 50-yarder. 2 weeks in a row pretty much has hit, I think a close to 50-yard field goal each of the last 2 weeks. Here's a guy that did go to the spring league, did go to the CFL, has bounced around, and now where's he at? Kicking for the Jets, and potentially a guy next training camp who has a chance to solidify himself, in an NFL job with the Jets, or someone else because of opportunity, and an opportunity that came about because of all the things we're dealing with. So I think it does show you that, that you can do this, even if it's in an odd fashion. And again, we love that you spend as much time as you do on the mock drafts, on listening to our show, following all the stuff we're doing. But it would be silly for us to not, to mention today, if you want to do something when you get off of watching our show, or you get off making fun of Ryan's mock draft, Google yourself, one of Pearl Harbor or D-Day, Google yourself, something like that. And, spend some time reading up about, something that you might not know enough about. I'm so fortunate to live in New Orleans, where they have the World War II Museum, and some of the things you're able to go and see and witness allows you to realize that, it's people that have been willing and are still willing to go and put their lives on the line like that, that allows us to have fun making fun of Ryan's mock draft.
You get it all here on the State of Football. It's like an Italian holiday. You laugh, you cry, you share stories, you argue, you yell, you hug, you kiss. Virtual edition, at least. Hey, we appreciate all the love and support on this Memorial Veterans Day, November 11th, 2020. Again, tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern. We'll be here weekdays, the State of Football, your new home for real football talk in the mornings. Oh, by the way, the Tailgate Show, Ryan has got a jam-packed edition there for Saturday morning's edition. Go to NFLDraftBible.com for all of our latest NFL Draft Big Board rankings. A lot of great feedback coming in from the NFL teams who are now searching our big board to find out who they're missing out on. So if it's good enough for the NFL teams, I hope it's good enough for you. Take advantage of that promo code Familia50. We've got some of the Familia hanging out in the chat room. Jesse Frittich there. We had Joe Everett hanging out yesterday, and Sippy is back at it again. Go check out the Sippy Sports Show. Sean Smith joining us here, bringing us the Concordia State action. What you want, what you need, we got you covered. FBS, FCS, D2, HBCU. We got it all in today. Grambling State, the whole shebang. Thank you for tuning in. Until the next time, everybody.